So right out of a pandemic, right into what may be the beginning of World War III. What an interesting reality we are living in. Well, with all this fun stuff going on, we are also going to be experiencing some increases in cost, not only with gas, obviously, but gas is what's used to move everything from point A to point B to point C. So the things that you're going to be purchasing in the stores and from your food suppliers and the containers and everything else, expect all of these prices to potentially go up. In this episode, we are going to be discussing one of the conversations that we are having in the private group. I'm going to kind of expand on it a little bit, get into a little bit more detail, but there's also some great dialogue going back and forth and probably some stuff that I'm going to leave only discussed in the private group. So if you want to join the private group, check out the links in the show notes for ways to get involved. But other than that, let's start the intro and get into the episode. What's going on, eaters and feeders? My name is Casey, and on my channel, I discuss business tips and tricks, startup hacks, entrepreneur mindset, and so much more based on my experience starting and growing Florida's highest rated meal prep company from nothing. So if you want to learn more about marketing, production, purchasing, sales, software, leadership, mindset, meditation, and everything in between, I invite you to subscribe and turn on those alert notifications so you don't miss out on any of my content. I produce videos weekly, I go live sporadically, and I don't want you missing out on any of it. If you've got an idea for an episode, let me know in the comments below. While you're down there, you're also going to want to make sure you check out the links in the show notes. Those links will give you access to so many more resources than I can fit into a YouTube video. I've got free calculators that teach you how to find all sorts of stuff that you can't see in your business. I've got free software that will completely run your business. I've got free ebooks. I've got free boot camps. I've got one-on-one consulting. I've got private groups. I've got so much stuff, and you will only find it if you check out those links in the show notes and if you venture on over to mealprepbiz101.com. That's my site where I host so many more tips, tools, resources, and great stuff that will make your life easier and make your business more successful. So check out those links and check out mealprepbiz101.com. Now let's check out today's episode.
Welcome to our channel where we go behind the scenes for meal plan company Fit Food Fresh and other local businesses across South Florida. Make sure you hit the subscribe and alerts so you never miss a video, and hit us with any questions or suggestions.
All right, so as I mentioned, this is something that came up in the private group. Candace was asking how we pay, and I guess she was asking basically everyone in the private group how they compensate the delivery drivers. And I do discuss this in other episodes. Really it comes down to a few different options. You can pay per drop, per mile, per hour, flat fee, and it's all going to, there's not really a one-size-fits-all answer to this. This is all going to be dependent upon how many routes you have, how long it takes to do the routes, how many bags you have on each route, how long they are. There's a myriad of different options and variables that are going to make paying per drop the ideal situation in one instance and shift over to paying by mile in another instance, and you could do a combination of the two. But these things, not only are they all subject to change as you grow in your routes, kind of switch forms and expand and contract, and your delivery radius might expand and contract, but also right now, as I mentioned, the cost of everything is exploding through the roof right now. Gas is the highest. It's about to be record highs per gallon in the US, and that means that not only are delivery drivers going to be needing more money from you to make it worthwhile for them to show up and run your routes, but you should expect all of your other food prices and everything else to also start increasing, because as I mentioned in the intro, things need to move from point A to point B to point C. So going from the manufacturer, their cost of their supplies, all that, even the plastic pellets that have to be shipped over from China or wherever else, and then they're melted into the container forms, and then they have to be shipped to a distributor, and the distributor has to ship them to you. There's going to be a cost associated with everything. Not to mention the fact that there's also sanctions that already exist in certain countries that are changing the supply chain. Now, as I mentioned before, gas is going to make everything universally more expensive. So what are you going to do to combat this? I assure you that if you're not planning on raising your prices, or if you're not comfortable with raising your prices, you might be in a pretty tough scenario by the end of this year. Maybe you've got a competitor across the street and you're watching them, you're making your moves based on what they do or don't do, and you're thinking, man, they're not going to raise their prices, none of their prices are going up, they're still offering free delivery. How could I possibly raise my prices, charge for delivery, and compete with that? Don't worry about that. You won't have to compete with them very long, because if they don't raise their prices, if they're not charging for delivery, and if they're not increasing their charge on delivery, they might not be your competitor very long. They might be out of business. You can't tell how well a business is doing from the outside, I assure you. They might be burning through savings, they might be scrambling to get loans, they might be bouncing checks left and right, and it could be any day now that they close their doors. In the meantime, you're making your business decisions based on what they're doing, not what your business's needs are, and that is a horrible way to run your business. Yes, you do have to factor what your competitors are doing to an extent, but not to the point where it's a detriment to your business, to where your quality is suffering, to where your employees are suffering, and the list goes on. But what I really want to drill into your heads is you need to be comfortable with raising prices. In fact, I normally prescribe regularly raising prices. New Year's is a great time to do it. We've obviously got a worldwide situation everyone is aware of right now, so people are going to understand why you're raising your prices. When they go to the grocery store, they see that things are more expensive. When they go to fill up their tank, they see that the gas is more expensive. So it's not going to be a surprise. It's not going to be something where you look like the bad guy. Yes, there may be some people who are on a fixed budget, and obviously their income's not going up just because your expenses are. But the reality of the situation is, wherever they are going to be purchasing the alternative, maybe they're going to go across the street to a competitor for a while if you've got a cheaper competitor. Unfortunately, it's the reality of the situation. But if that competitor then has to close down their business because they didn't raise their prices and they just kind of ran themselves into debt, hoping that this situation would end and overnight prices are going to drop, I assure you it's probably not going to happen. Even if everything ended tomorrow, there's not only going to be a backlog of all these things, all these products that were purchased at the higher price that still have to be sold at a higher price, but when have you seen any kind of business voluntarily reduce their prices dramatically just because, if they're getting away with it today, how fast are they really going to drop their prices? They're not in the business of making a consistent margin. They're in the business of making as much money as possible. So if they're able to raise the price 50 cents, and then let's say that whatever that price was that they had to absorb by raising the price 50 cents, let's say it completely went away tomorrow, you really think they're going to drop it 50 cents and you think they're going to do it immediately? Probably not. Definitely not everybody. The gas probably isn't going to be going down anytime soon, and it's probably going to be several years before we see gas prices like we saw, in the beginning of the pandemic, or even when we were going into the pandemic, because the supply and demand relationship was a different variable. We had less people driving, we had more of a supply, and they were more desperate to move it. So gas prices plummeted. Even though we had this worldwide craziness going on, we'd think there'd be some kind of shortage, but in reality, the way that worked out is we actually got lower gas prices. Now we are dealing with the supply issue where we're going to have to start sourcing fuel from different areas. The reality of the situation is, even if we wanted to start drilling in the US, it's still going to be 6 to 18 months before we're really going to feel a difference at the pump. That's what all the people smarter than me who I listen to are saying. So even if we started trying to resolve this tomorrow, it's still going to be, let's say, a year before we're able to really put a dent into what we're seeing. As far as sourcing it from other places, a lot of, not to get into the political game, but a lot of places who have the ability to help us out are looking to capitalize on the situation, so they're not voluntarily lowering their prices. People are talking about Venezuela, and I saw some recent stuff today saying that the relationship with Venezuela looks like it might be heading in a better direction. Well, the type of oil that Venezuela has is actually much thicker, takes much more refinement process, and their machinery isn't really anything that's super modern. It's a bit out of date. So that's probably, even if it is a viable solution, it's not going to be tomorrow. It's not going to be this month. It's probably not going to be anything that we could expect to feel this year. So again, if you think that you can just kind of knuckle down and shave off some profit and tighten your belt a little bit, it's not going to be a few months. Even if this is resolved tomorrow, we're looking at, I would say, at least a year. And I'd rather be wrong and come off as a pessimist, and 3 months from now you could tell me, nope, Casey, you were wrong about that, instead of just telling you guys to sit tight, keep your prices, don't worry about raising them on anybody. Because the reality of the situation is, if you are going to be more conservative with how you plan your business, you're going to be blindsided by fewer things. So if you start warming up ideas on how you can start raising your prices, if you're not charging delivery right now, you need to start charging delivery. If you are charging delivery, probably going to have to start charging a little bit more. If you're doing 2 deliveries a week, you might want to transition to 1 delivery a week, or you can offer that as an alternative to people. For instance, for 2 deliveries a week, we charge $15. If you want to just get 1 delivery a week, you could just pay $8. You get the same amount of food. If you're worried about the food lasting, then you can go ahead and throw it in the freezer. I know it's not ideal for people who want food that is never frozen, but it comes down to what your priorities are. You could also offer, if people don't want to pay delivery or they don't want to pay a higher delivery fee, you could also offer to let them pick it up. They're going to say, well, that's inconvenient for me to come by and pick it up. Well, you kind of got to pay for convenience. This isn't how you're going to talk to them. This is how I'm just talking to you. You're obviously going to want to put on your kid gloves. You want to put on your white gloves and gently explain to them that your costs are going up and you can't afford to continue to offer the same services at the same price because they're no longer affordable to you. The price of food, there's a few different ways that you could start massaging in those tactics. And again, that's probably something I'm going to leave in the private group as far as those discussion. But I want you to start thinking of your own ways of how you could start inching up the food prices, because again, even if the cost of that chicken doesn't really cost more to raise a chicken, and it still does, I assure you, because they got to buy chicken feed, which has to come on a truck, which has to run on gas. But even if it didn't, your distributor is still, your supplier is still going to be paying more because their absorbed cost is going to be higher, and the cost to bring it from their warehouse to your kitchen is going to be higher because they got to, guess what, put it on a truck. And what do trucks run on? Gas. Even if you're picking stuff up at Restaurant Depot and Costco or any of these other places, and you're doing the driving to go get it, there's still going to be a higher cost. You're going to start seeing, if you haven't noticed it already, things are going to inch up. If you are in a major city, you're definitely already seeing these prices go up. My friends who are in bigger cities, I mean, I'm in Boca Raton, South Florida. We're not exactly a small place, but I know for sure the bigger cities like Los Angeles and Los Angeles and New York and Miami, they're feeling all of this stuff ahead of us, and it's going to trickle out and spread to the suburbs and the more rural areas. So I assure you, if you haven't really noticed it, or you've noticed it just a little bit, I don't think there's a place in the country aside from the very center where all of the refineries and pumps are, who haven't already had a price shock at the pump. But you're going to start noticing it at the grocery store and with your food vendors. And these are just costs that cannot be absorbed. They can't just sell it to you at the same price while their costs are going up. So why would you think that the food vendors would have to do this and you wouldn't? It's just, and here's another thing to consider. It's going to be awkward to raise it a weird amount. Like, it's hard to raise things 15 cents, right? It's going to make it weird. That might be something that you want to do. Might want to make it 50 cents, might want to make it $1. You might want to really sharpen the pencil and figure out what your increased expenses are. But just because they've gone up to X amount today don't assume that's where they're going to stay. I anticipate prices, especially for gas, and then everything, as I mentioned earlier, everything's related to gas. I expect gas is going to continue to go up. And again, this is based on smarter people who know more about this stuff. This is what I'm paying attention to. And they're saying that we're on track to set record highs for per gallon prices of gas, and renewable energy, and everyone getting a Tesla, and nuclear and wind and water energy, hydroelectric. It's so far off and so immature and in its infancy that it is not going to be ready in any amount of time that's going to benefit us without making our own counter moves right now. I want to kind of just get this one out right off the dome. I'm probably going to get back into the private group and add a little bit more because I had some more ideas that I want to expand upon while I was shooting this. Again, if you want to join the private group, I invite you to do so. There's going to be links below. You could also go to www.mealprepbiz101.com. Obviously, I've got a bunch of goodies, boot camps, one-on-one consulting, software. Software is another thing I wanted to mention. I'll probably have to do another announcement about this because I want to do a little bit more research. I have been hearing from some of my consultation clients and some other people, and this has actually been something that's been coming up over the last few months. There's one transgressor in particular. I'm going to try not to mention the name, but there are multiple software companies, again, one in particular, who is mentioning my name as if in the context that I endorse them and that I've worked with them and advised them. Now, I won't say that I haven't given ideas to a multitude of software companies. When I go through these demos, I'll say, yeah, you should do this, you should do that. This is what I've found works best. But the software companies for the meal prep business who I endorse, it's a very small list. It's like 3 companies, kind of 2.5. And it depends on what your situation is. I'm not biased. I don't have a favorite. I don't want to have a favorite. If you have good software and if you have a good support team behind you, and I believe in your product and the service, and I can confidently endorse you to my audience, you people watching this, then I have no problem offering multiple software companies. However, there are some who I am not endorsing, but they are using my name, my credibility, and they have mentioned it, and it's getting back to me. And again, I try not to speak publicly and negatively publicly about anybody. I have developed software. I've been a part of too many software projects to not know the inherent issues that come with software development. So I give them all the benefit of the doubt. I try not to publicly run anybody through the mud. But if there's a software company who I endorse, you'll hear about it from me. You can reach out to me and I will tell you the short list of software companies I endorse, and I will discuss with you what your situation is, what your needs are, what the pros and cons of the different software companies are. But like I said, it's really 3 companies. Anybody else, they're either in the gray and I'm not sure about them, I'm waiting to see a little bit more, get some good feedback, or I don't think that they're there yet. There's one in particular, ironically, that's the one who's using my name the most as if I'm giving them endorsements, and that is the one company who I am the closest to mentioning publicly that I would steer people away from. And that's not just based on my experience. That is largely based on, because I know I've got a lot of people who are frustrated with certain software, and I could see it as like, okay, maybe this was like a salesman to developer miscommunication. So the salesman told you this and the developer's like, oh no, that's not ready, or no, we can't do that. Okay. Or it's not ready, or the system's not ready, or there's a design or software coding issue. Okay, but there's one in particular who I've heard from multiple consultation clients who have had horrible experience. Not only is the software nowhere near what they expect, bunch of hidden fees that they weren't told about until they're already in bed with the company and it's kind of too late to turn around. But also I'm trying not to be specific here, but also let's say the customer service is not just inadequate, it is actually almost deliberately offensive, and their lack of ability to take accountability is really the one thing that makes them the only company that, again, I'm trying not to talk about anybody publicly, give everyone the benefit of the doubt, but this one company, 100% of the people I know of who have worked with them would tell you to go and stack a pile of your money and just burn it, because you'll be better off. It'll take less time and be less of a headache. So sorry about that rant. This is something that I wasn't planning on addressing when I started the camera here, but I figured while I got it rolling, not sure when I'm going to be shooting again. So it's out there. Again, if you're interested in software, I've got some who I can refer you to, who I do stand behind and endorse. Reach out to me. I will let you know. Private group, one-on-one consulting, boot camps, ebooks, all that fun stuff. You probably already know by now. It's on the website. But other than that, I wish you guys the best of luck. I know, especially for you guys who are just starting off and you've only got a handful of customers, you're holding on to them, you're afraid to give them any kind of bad news, you're probably terrified at the idea of telling them that you have to raise your prices, but there are different ways to do it. There are some ways to finesse it. I cover this in other videos. I've got some new ideas, again, that I'm going to be discussing in the private group. We could also book a one-on-one consultation if you want to dump your troubles on me, pick my brain and get my perspective on things. I invite you to do that. All of that is through the website, mealprepbiz101.com. Other than that, please make sure you're subscribed not only to the YouTube, my podcast as well, and I hope you have an amazing week. Wish you the best of luck, and stay strong. There's a solution. You just got to have the fortitude, the clarity, and the patience to find it. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Again, I want to stress that you need to be subscribed to both the YouTube and the podcast. So make sure you're doing that so you get the most out of the content that I'm producing. You're also going to want to make sure that you're checking out those show notes. They're going to have links to more resources, freebies, goodies, all sorts of fun stuff like that. And of course, mealprepbiz101.com. Until my next episode, I look forward to helping you grow as a business, as an entrepreneur, and as an individual.